Iran continues to attack everybody. In this update, we are going to focus on the Gulf states, specifically on Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, who've been under attack by the Iranians since this war started. And we're going to go see what's up with them. What are they saying? What are they doing? And what are they signaling in terms of where they want this conflict to go? So let's get right to it. So here we have, this is from today. Iranian missiles intercepted over Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain. Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Defense has said that it has intercepted and destroyed 2 ballistic missiles launched towards Prince Sultan Air Base in Al-Kharj, as the United States and Israel's war on Iran and Tehran's retaliation on Gulf states housing U.S. assets continue to engulf the region. The ministry also said that it intercepted 6 drones heading towards the Shaiba oil field. The ministry said a drone was intercepted and destroyed east of Riyadh City. Qatar's defense ministry said, quote, armed forces intercepted a missile attack which targeted the country on Saturday. It did not elaborate on how many missiles were involved or what the target was. The Qatari minister of defense had said the country came under a wave of drone attacks on Friday, with 10 drones fired from Iran, 9 were intercepted and destroyed, and 1 landed in a remote area. Qatar's Civil Aviation Authority announced the partial resumption of air navigation in the state of Qatar. Okay. In the United Arab Emirates, the defense ministry said its air defenses were responding to incoming missile and drone threats from Iran. And it added that Iran's IRGC Navy launched a drone attack on the Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, a U.S. satellite communication center, a early warning and fire control radars were all hit. Okay. Also in the UAE, online airline tracker Flight Radar 24 reported that a number of flights bound for Dubai are in a holding pattern over the airport. And the government media office reported that there had been a minor incident resulting from the fall of debris during an interception. Okay, so they're still under attack by the Iranians, all these Gulf states. And that has led to, well, here's a little bit more from today. Saudi Arabia ballistic missile targeting Prince Sultan Air Base falls in uninhabited area. Official spokesman of the Saudi Defense Ministry, Turki al-Maliki. Is that this guy? Yeah, that's him. Turki al-Maliki announced on Saturday that a ballistic missile that had targeted one of its air bases fell in an uninhabited area. So that's multiple days in a row that they've been targeting this air base. You see, the previous day, this is from a few days ago, Saudi Arabia intercepts 3 ballistic missiles targeting Prince Sultan Air Base. So this has become a daily occurrence. Okay, that was from a couple days ago. This is from yesterday, and this is from today. Okay. Earlier, al-Maliki said the kingdom's defenses intercepted 14 drones that were headed towards the Shaiba oil field. Okay, so you see what the Iranians are doing. They're trying to target the oil assets and the air base, which is an American air base. Okay, defense is also there's American assets there. Defense has also intercepted and destroyed 6 drones that were targeting the same field. 1 that was aimed at the capital, Riyadh, 3 ballistic missiles that were launched at the Prince Sultan Air Base in Al-Kharj. On Friday, there were more missiles. Okay, it's all the same, meaning every day the Iranians are firing at these 2 sites in Saudi Arabia. And then there's this headline. GCC Secretary General calls for Arab solidarity against Iranian aggression at emergency meeting. Okay, Gulf Cooperation Council Secretary General Yassem Al-Budaiwi participated via video conference in an extraordinary session of the Arab League Council at the ministerial level to address the ongoing regional crisis. He called for urgent Arab solidarity, and he condemned all of the Iranian attacks. And they submitted a draft resolution at the UN Security Council. Okay, the resolution seeks a formal condemnation of the Iranian attacks and demands that the international community take concrete steps in accordance with the UN Charter and international law to restore regional security. What's really interesting and worth noting, it might be an obvious point, is that with all the condemnations of Iran, usually what you expect to see out of these Muslim states, out of these Arab states, is that while they're issuing the condemnation against Iran, that they would also condemn Israel. But of course, they're not condemning Israel because Israel's fighting alongside the U.S. They're not even condemning Israel's strikes on Lebanon, which the United States is not involved in. Very interesting. And then we have this story also from today. Saudi Arabia has told Iran to stop attacks, warned of possible retaliation, sources say. Now, I have something to say about that, but let's take a look at what it says. Saudi Arabia has told Tehran that while it favors a diplomatic settlement, it's a very important point, Saudi Arabia wants a diplomatic settlement to Iran's conflict with the United States, continued attacks on the kingdom and its energy sector could push Riyadh to respond in kind, four sources familiar with the matter told Reuters on Saturday. Thursday saw the Saudi foreign minister speak to the Iranian foreign minister and set out Riyadh's position. Saudi Arabia is open to any form of mediation aimed at de-escalation and a negotiated settlement, the sources quoted the minister as saying, underlining that neither Riyadh nor the Gulf states had let the U.S. use their airspace or territory to launch airstrikes on Iran. So Saudi Arabia is not talking tough talk. They want this to de-escalate and to be negotiated. I'm going to say what I said before the war started, and it continues to be true. No matter which side the Saudis are on at any given moment, the Saudis do not want the Iranian regime to completely go away. They are thrilled if it's weak, but they don't want it to completely go away. They don't need that type of chaos right nearby. They don't need that at all. They also don't want it to become a free Western democracy because that would undermine them in other ways. They would also lose their strategic importance if the Iranian regime were to completely change and become super pro-Western. So they have their interests here, but they're also under attack, and they're playing as though they're on the Americans and Israeli side. But what they really want is for this war to end with the Iranian regime weakened and beaten, but still in control. Prince Faisal was also quoted by the sources as saying that if Iranian attacks persisted against Saudi territory or energy infrastructure, Saudi Arabia would be forced to permit U.S. forces to use their bases there for military operations. Riyadh would retaliate if attacks on the kingdom's critical energy facilities continued, he said. But you notice that he's saying, if the attacks continue, we're going to allow the Americans to use our bases. Look, why do I bring this up? Because I said that warned of possible retaliation. As of now, many, many missiles and drones have been fired at all of these Gulf states. Not one of them has actually fired at Iran. Okay, there are reports that the UAE did. We'll get to that in a moment. But they're not actually joining the fight in an offensive way. And that could be for a number of reasons. The simplest reason is that the U.S. and Israel have a very well-oiled machine, working at a very high level. These are the two top air forces in the world. The last thing they need is these guys who are nowhere near as well-trained as they are and aren't part of all of their planning that went on. I mean, it's so complex. The last thing they need is these guys joining the fight, okay? And maybe at some point in this conflict where it's kind of it's not so difficult for them to come in and do an air sortie here or there, but they don't need the Emiratis and the Qataris and the Saudis launching missiles into a zone that they are carefully mapping and sharing intelligence with each other and planning their strikes very carefully. So that's one very simple reason why they wouldn't have joined, besides the fact that they might not want to. Anyway, so there you have that. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed on the first day of the war. Tehran responded by hitting Israel and Gulf states, right? On Saturday, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian apologized to neighboring Gulf states for Tehran's actions, an apparent attempt to diffuse regional anger over Iranian strikes that hit civilian targets, and said Iran's Temporary Leadership Council had approved suspending attacks on nearby countries unless an attack on Iran came from those nations. But hours later, Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, the unified combatant command of the Iranian armed forces, said in a statement that U.S. and Israeli bases and interests across the region would remain targets. In other words, Masoud Pezeshkian, who was always a figurehead anyway, the president in Iran never really had power. The power was all in the supreme leader, sort of a figurehead position. So now he's coming up and saying, we're sorry, it's going to stop, but he doesn't really have any power. And sure enough, the combatant command headquarters, central headquarters says, no, we're going to keep attacking them. And they have. Okay. Iran had in recent years mended fences with its Gulf neighbors, including former regional arch rival Saudi Arabia. The diplomatic campaign imploded in the blitz of drones and missiles launched by Iran's Revolutionary Guards in the past week. So you see what's happened there. In terms of what I said before, that none of the Gulf states have attacked, there was a report in the Jerusalem Post and in Ynet that the UAE had struck a desalination facility in Iran. The UAE denied that. It was originally reported again in Israeli media, and it's cited in a senior Israeli official, a senior Israeli source. And Abu Dhabi, the Emirates, was very upset about this, and they put out a statement saying, quote, "It is not appropriate for what is described as a senior Israeli source to speak on our behalf or spread rumors about the actions of another sovereign state. This is a sovereign state that makes its decisions independently." Okay, and the Jerusalem Post added their own comment that they also believe that the UAE would not strike a civilian target to enter the war, but even if they were going to enter the war, it would be by striking a military site, and I agree with that logic. Okay, the United Arab Emirates was initially said to have struck an Iranian desalination facility on Sunday. That would have been its first retaliatory strike, but of course they're denying it. Okay. Quote, "The UAE emphasizes that it does not seek to be drawn in to any conflict or escalation, but affirms its full right to take all necessary measures to protect its sovereignty, national security, and territorial integrity. The UAE will never place the Iranian people in the same basket as the Iranian regime." Now, so here what they're saying is, not only didn't we do it, but we would never attack a civilian infrastructure site like a desalination plant that provides drinking water, it provides fresh water for people, for the Iranian people. They would never strike such a thing. The Iranian people are the real victims of that regime and the ones who suffer the most from its policies. As neighbors, we recognize this reality and we care about their well-being. Okay. A Wall Street Journal report from Friday said that the UAE is considering freezing billions of dollars worth of assets belonging to Iran, a move that would cripple the country's connection to the global economy. Now, you might wonder, why haven't they done it already? This is an extreme measure. Okay. It's virtually never, ever done that assets get frozen in time of war, even of enemies, because you never know what's going to happen down the road. And it's not a precedent that anyone really wants to set, where assets of sovereign nations get frozen, no matter how evil they are. Even in World War II, the Nazi assets in foreign banks were not frozen. So yeah, but they're considering doing it here. It was something that was that the Biden administration did to the Russians at the beginning of the Ukraine war. Very controversial. So they don't want to go down that route, but they're warning about it. Okay. And also from the UAE, this is a senior advisor to the government of the UAE. Anwar Gargash wrote, "The UAE is in a state of self-defense in the face of Iranian aggression that targeted its territories, its people, its civilian infrastructure. Any defensive measures that the state will take will be public and clear, and will not rely on press leaks or narratives from unknown sources and intentions. Our goal is to stop this ongoing aggression against the UAE and the Arab Gulf states, not to be dragged into escalation." Okay, in other words, they are denying it. They're saying anything we're going to do, we're going to be public about. Don't listen to leaks. Don't listen to these unknown sources. This is a rebuke of the Jerusalem Post story claiming that they hit a desalination plant. And again, and here's Arab News. This is a Saudi outlet. Also repeating this, the UAE denies striking a desalination facility. And a source close to the UAE noted that the officials in Abu Dhabi were having difficulty understanding Israel's conduct and the nature of the briefings Jerusalem Post reported, as the UAE is a sovereign state that makes its decisions independently. In other words, they really were not happy with the Israelis putting out this messaging, this quote unquote leak about a UAE attack on a desalination plant. Okay. Here, this is an interesting story that relates to all of this. Inside the UAE's response to Iranian attacks, a senior official speaks. So this is a briefing to Euronews and select media by a senior UAE official. This is a story from today. Okay, and I just want to scroll down. The stuff near the beginning is all things that we know from the previous report, but listen to what it says here. The Iranian strategy, this is what this senior UAE official said in this press briefing. The Iranian strategy is to try to create regional havoc, but they did not expect air defenses in the Gulf to do so well. Our air defense has done a great job. We have a multi-layered system. Okay, and then he goes on to say, quote, I have to say that the French support has been stellar. You know, their Rafales have moved in from day one. They've kicked in their agreement with us from day one. They are part of our continuing air patrols, taking down, missiles and taking down mainly drones. This is something the French demonstrated when the Houthis attacked in 2021. And then again, this time also, this has kicked in, the official said. Authorities say the priority remains protecting the country while maintaining stability across the economy and daily life. Quote, we will continue defending the country, defending everybody here, and making sure that slowly we go back to normal. Talks about seeing that there's more flights going out. And then look what he says down here. At the same time, officials warn the attacks may reshape how the region approaches negotiations with Iran in the future. Quote, any new negotiated settlement with Iran will no longer be confined to the nuclear aspect. Missiles are now center stage because missiles now are not seen as self-defense. Wow. That's huge. Let me explain why that's huge. That's huge because the Israelis were the ones saying it's all about the missiles, it's all about the missiles. Yeah, it's also about the nuclear, but it's about the missiles, right? The Iranians were trying to say this is just a negotiation over nuclear. The United States mentioned the missiles, and then as it got closer to doomsday, they started mentioning the missiles more. But the Arab states kind of stayed out of it, and they were kind of in this mediating role. And now they're embracing the fact that Iran cannot have the ballistic missile program either. So that's important. If this whole conflict stops short of bringing down the regime, this position is very important, that the Arab states are also now going to come down, if they are, going to come down on the side of Iran cannot have a missile program. Okay, and then he talks about how strong their economy is. Very nice. Now, in terms of the French helping out the UAE and getting credit for it, here's an interesting story. French president reaffirms military support for Qatar as Gulf states report new wave of drone and missile attacks. Okay, so it talks about how France has deployed air defense support to Qatar as President Emmanuel Macron reaffirmed Paris's military and political backing for Doha. Okay, and it's all about how they're going to protect Qatar. He emphasized that France and Qatar share the same priority of securing global energy supplies, right? All about Qatar. The French president also revealed that Paris is currently deploying defensive military support in the region, particularly in the air domain, for the benefit of Qatar. No mention of the other Gulf states. Okay, this is all about, and this is not a Qatari media outlet. This is a Kurdish media outlet that I happen to be reading. But here you see the focus is on Qatar. France is a reliable and loyal ally and will continue to honor its commitments alongside Qatar. Okay, worth noting. Now, then in this same piece, it gives numbers because we've been hearing, the Gulf states are getting attacked. And a lot of people think that the main attacks are coming against Israel and the Gulf states are just getting a few drones here and there, a couple missiles. But look at these numbers. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defense of the UAE released new statistics regarding aerial attacks targeting the Emirates. According to the ministry, UAE air defense systems detected 17 ballistic missiles on Sunday, just today, intercepting 16 of them while one fell into the sea. Authorities also reported 117 drones were launched towards the UAE, with 113 intercepted and 4 falling inside the country. Since the start of the Iranian attacks, officials say a total of 238 ballistic missiles have been fired, of which 221 were intercepted. You understand? This has been a barrage of missiles fired at the UAE, a barrage. And the same is true, by the way, of other Gulf states. The ministry also reported that 1,422 Iranian drones had been launched, with 1,342 neutralized and 80 crashing. The UAE has been attacked by hundreds of ballistic missiles and close to 1,500 drones. Okay, they've been under constant attack. Regarding casualties, officials said the attacks killed 4 people. Another 112 people sustained minor to moderate injuries, including citizens of the UAE and foreign nationals. And then it gives a list of other countries. Okay, so you start to see what the numbers are here. Iran is not, these are not just token attacks at the Gulf states. These are serious barrages. So I pointed out before that the Saudis want a negotiated end to this, and so do the other Gulf states. They really don't want a Western-style democracy. The regime change that a lot of people in the West are hoping for is not necessarily something that these kingdoms, these emirates and Saudi Arabia, that are not democracies, and they're these Muslim non-democracies, they don't necessarily want that next door. So they actually want a negotiated settlement. But here you go. Trump rejects settling the Iran war. Now, I'm specifically reading this out of Arab News, which is that Saudi outlet, to see how the Saudis are looking at Trump not wanting to negotiate. Look how critical they are in the tone of the article. U.S. President Donald Trump said his war with Iran, see what they call it, may only end with its military and rulers wiped out. Okay, shortly after Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One he was not interested in negotiating an end to the conflict that has roiled oil markets, hurt business, and snarled global travel, U.S. ally Israel announced fresh strikes across Iran that it had said hit critical fuel storage sites. You see the way they're painting it? They're painting it as, this is Trump's war, and it talks about all the negative impact of the war in the sentence talking about how he does not want to negotiate. And then further on down, look at this. It gets even worse. Trump has justified the biggest U.S. military operation in the Middle East since 2003 invasion of Iraq by saying Tehran posed an imminent threat to the United States without providing evidence. See that? So this is a news item about Trump saying he doesn't want to negotiate, but the whole tone of the news item is critical of Trump. Now, that might sound strange. This is the Saudis, right? Shouldn't they be on the side of the Americans? Aren't they gung-ho together with the U.S. and Israel? Weren't they pushing for attacks? They don't want the regime to fall. They want a negotiated settlement. So they want to raise the alarm about rising oil prices and instability, and the fact that this war has got to end, and it should never have started, and Trump never justified it, because they want it to end quickly. That's what this is all about. And a final note in this video, and look who's making money off the Gulf being attacked. This is from a Ukrainian news outlet. UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait have requested TAF Industries interceptor drones. Check this out. Countries in the Persian Gulf have expressed interest in Ukrainian interceptor drones and have submitted purchase requests to the Ukrainian company TAF Industries. Alexander Yakovenko, the company's founder, told the Financial Times that the UAE had requested 5,000 drones, Qatar 2,000, while Kuwait also expressed interest in acquiring the systems. Okay, so here, these guys are going to make a killing. The Ukrainian defense industry is going to cash in on the attacks by Iran on the Gulf states. Just another little side note of what has happened in this war. All right, we'll leave it there. There's your update on what is going on with the Gulf states. Just to sum up the key issue. Number one, the Gulf states want this war to end quickly. They want stabilization in the oil market. They want a weak Tehran regime, but they don't want it to fall. They don't want a free, open Western democracy on their doorstep, and they certainly don't want chaos on their doorstep. So what they want is a quick end to the thing, find some people you can work with in the regime, bring it to a close, tame them, make them weak, but keep the regime intact, That's what the Gulf states want. That's what the Saudis want. That's number one. Number two, as of yet, at least officially, none of the Gulf states have actually fired anything at Iran. They're only taking defensive measures. And my analysis is that that's not because of a lack of will on their part necessarily. It could be that too, but I don't think the Americans and the Israelis actually want them joining this. I don't think it would be a good thing for anybody if they joined in. It would certainly not help the careful planning and execution of the Israeli and American militaries that have been working so well together. Those are the key takeaways here from this update. Hope this was helpful. Please keep watching and make sure to check out everything that we're doing at Israel 365. Don't just go to the YouTube channel, but check out the website, Israel365.com. We've got some important charity campaigns happening there now too. And please continue to support all that great work. God bless.